Lightning slashed across the midnight sky, illuminating the solitary figure of Ethan Westbrook as he stood motionless before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse. For a moment, the brilliant flash revealed what he kept hidden from the world, a jagged scar running from temple to jaw, a permanent reminder etched into his flesh. Thunder crashed, and in that violent sound, memories surfaced like drowning victims gasping for air. "Did you ever love me at all?" he had asked that night, rain pelting the windshield as Victoria's laughter cut through the darkness. "Love you." Her perfect lips had curved into a smile that haunted him still. "I love what you could give me, Ethan. Your fortune, your connections. But you were just the price I had to pay." Then came the blinding headlights, the screech of tires on wet asphalt, the shattering glass as their world exploded around them. Another lightning strike brought Ethan back to the present. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass, 30 stories above a city that feared him but knew nothing of his pain. 5 years had passed since that night. 5 years of rebuilding not his heart, but his walls. The Ice King, they called him now. The CEO whose brilliance was matched only by his mercilessness. Every decision calculated, every emotion locked away, every weakness eliminated. His empire had never been stronger. Westbrook Industries dominated the market, its value tripling under his cold, precise leadership. Everything he touched turned to gold, everything except happiness. Ethan turned from the window, his slight limp barely noticeable as he moved through the vast penthouse. Minimalist furniture in shades of gray and white. Pristine surfaces that never collected dust. Art chosen for investment value rather than beauty. A monument to success. A mausoleum to emotion. Perfect, pristine, utterly lifeless. Just like the heart beating in his chest. As lightning flashed once more, across the city, a young woman named Olivia Chen gathered her belongings for her first day at a new job. Her small apartment was warm despite its shabbiness, filled with photos and mementos of a life richly lived if not financially rewarded. Tomorrow, she would start as a maid at the Westbrook estate. The pay was excellent. The benefits would cover her grandmother's medical care, and perhaps it would be the fresh start she needed after leaving her nursing career behind. A new beginning, she whispered to herself, unaware that fate had set in motion a collision course between two souls, one encased in ice, one burning with quiet determination. Neither could possibly know how their lives would intertwine, nor the passion that would eventually melt the coldest of hearts and create a love powerful enough to heal the deepest wounds. And certainly, neither could imagine the precious new lives that would one day bind them together forever. Hello, my beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Chapters of Love, where every story touches a heart and reminds us that even in our darkest moments, love finds a way. I wonder, where are you listening from tonight? Are you curled up in bed with a warm cup of tea? Perhaps you're on your commute home, seeking an escape from the day's stress. Or maybe you're like me, watching the rain against your window and dreaming of a love powerful enough to heal even the deepest wounds. Wherever you are, I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend this time with me. If this story speaks to your heart, please tap that like button and subscribe. It helps our community grow and lets me know which stories touch you most deeply. Now, settle in as we discover how a man who built walls around his heart meets the one woman who refuses to be shut out, and how sometimes the most unexpected love becomes our greatest healing. The Westbrook name had always commanded respect in business circles, but few knew the truth behind the empire's current leader. Ethan hadn't been born into coldness. He had been forged in fire, then frozen by betrayal. His parents, James and Eleanor Westbrook, built their technology company from a garage startup to a national presence through equal parts brilliance and genuine partnership. Their marriage was a blueprint for Ethan's understanding of love. Two people who challenged, supported, and completed each other. In board meetings, his father would often say, "My wife is my compass," while his mother would finish with, "And my husband is my anchor." When a small plane crash claimed them both on Ethan's 20th birthday, he inherited not just their company but their philosophy. Love and business were intertwined in his mind. Both required honesty, commitment, and mutual respect. For 3 years after their death, Ethan poured himself into honoring their legacy. Westbrook Industries expanded internationally under his leadership. His natural charm and emotional intelligence winning over partners his parents had never been able to reach. Employees spoke of his fairness, his open-door policy, his habit of remembering their children's names. Then Victoria Sinclair walked into a charity gala and changed everything. Brilliant, ambitious, and captivating, she headed marketing for a competing firm. Their debate over industry ethics turned into dinner, which became a 3-year relationship that seemed destined for greatness. Victoria matched Ethan intellectually while awakening a passion he'd never experienced. When he proposed, presenting both a ring and an offer to merge their professional talents at Westbrook, he believed he'd found his compass and anchor. We were planning the merger announcement for following Monday. Ethan's voice was distant as he recounted the story to his board years later, justifying his ruthless acquisition of Victoria's former company. I arrived early at her apartment to celebrate. What he never told them was how he'd stood frozen in her hallway, a bottle of champagne in hand, as Victoria's voice drifted from her home office. "Of course I don't love him," she'd laughed into the phone, "but I've spent 3 years securing my position. Once we're married, I have legal claim to Westbrook's patents and board seat. The prenup his lawyer drafted has loopholes I could drive a truck through." A pause, and his parents really did number on him, all that true love nonsense. It made him so easy to manipulate, play the brilliant equal in public, stroke his ego in private, and he handed me everything I wanted. When confronted, Victoria didn't deny it. Instead, her mask slipped completely, revealing the calculated ambition beneath. "You should thank me," she'd said coldly. "I taught you the most valuable business lesson. Everyone has an angle. At least I was better at the game than most." Their argument continued in the car, Ethan driving too fast, Victoria taunting him with details of her deception. The rain, the sharp curve, the oncoming headlights. Then chaos. Ethan woke in the hospital 3 days later. Multiple surgeries had saved his leg, but couldn't prevent the permanent limp. The laceration across his face had been stitched by the best plastic surgeon in the city, but would leave a scar that would never fade, a daily reminder in the mirror of his foolishness. Victoria had walked away with minor bruises. Her final cruelty came during her only hospital visit. "I'm releasing a statement that we've mutually ended our engagement," she informed him, standing at the foot of his bed in an immaculate suit. "Sinclair marketing can't be associated with..." Her eyes flicked over his bandaged face. "Damaged goods." The Ethan Westbrook who emerged from that hospital was unrecognizable to those who had known him before. The warm-hearted visionary became calculating and cold. The leader who remembered children's names became the CEO who fired anyone showing a hint of weakness. "Sentiment is a liability," became his mantra in board meetings. "Results are the only currency I recognize." His workdays extended to 18 hours. His penthouse became a sterile showcase rather than a home. Former friends received polite, but firm distance until they stopped calling. Women who showed interest were entertained briefly, then dismissed before any attachment could form. The transformation was so complete that business magazines dubbed him the Ice King, a title he neither encouraged nor refuted. What no one saw were the panic attacks that gripped him without warning, leaving him gasping for breath in private elevators and locked bathrooms. The nightmares that jolted him awake, sheets soaked with sweat, Victoria's laughter echoing in his mind. These vulnerabilities became his most closely guarded secret. Not even his personal assistant of 7 years had witnessed these moments of weakness, until the night a storm raged outside his mansion, and a new maid entered his study at precisely the wrong moment. Or perhaps, though Ethan wouldn't realize it for months, precisely the right one. The Westbrook estate loomed before Olivia Chen like something from another world. 20 acres of manicured grounds surrounding a modernist mansion of glass, stone, and sharp angles. Security cameras tracked her approach to the service entrance where Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper, waited with clipboard in hand and disapproval etched into every line of her face. "You're 3 minutes late, Miss Chen." Olivia checked her watch. "Actually, I'm 2 minutes early." Mrs. Winters' lips thinned. At the Westbrook estate, early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. Mr. Westbrook demands precision in all things. This set the tone for Olivia's orientation, a litany of exacting standards that bordered on obsessive, sheets folded with military corners. surfaces dusted twice daily, windows cleaned to such perfection they seemed non-existent, and most importantly, absolute invisibility while performing these tasks. Mr. Westbrook does not like to be reminded that maintaining his environment requires human intervention, Mrs. Winters explained, leading Olivia through sterile corridors that felt more like a museum than a home. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not make eye contact unless addressed directly. You will... I'm familiar with professional boundaries, Olivia interrupted quietly. I worked in trauma care for 3 years. Mrs. Winters paused, reassessing the young woman before her. Yes, your nursing background was unusual for this position. Why exactly did someone with medical training apply to be a housekeeper? Olivia maintained her composure, though the question stung. 6 months ago, she'd been on track for a promotion at Metropolitan Hospital. Then her grandmother's stroke had changed everything, moving her to a care facility. The mounting medical bills, the impossible choice between night shifts and being there for the woman who had raised her. Life takes unexpected turns, she answered simply. This position offers stability and benefits I need right now. What she didn't mention were the 3 rejection letters from hospitals citing the employment gap, or how her savings had dwindled to double digits last week. This job wasn't just convenient. It was necessary. Their tour ended at the East Wing service stairs. Mr. Westbrook returns at 7 each evening. You'll have completed the upper floor by then. Mrs. Winters handed over a ring of keys. Remember Ms. Chen, invisible but impeccable. Olivia nodded, already calculating how to maximize efficiency. Her first 3 days passed without incident, or rather, without encountering the mansion's owner. She moved through the rooms like a ghost, restoring order to spaces that hardly seemed disturbed. The only evidence of human habitation came in Ethan's study, where coffee cups accumulated and paper spread across surfaces in organized chaos. On the 4th day, their paths finally crossed. Olivia was replacing towels in the master bathroom when the bedroom door opened without warning. She froze, arms full of Egyptian cotton, as Ethan Westbrook strode in, already loosening his tie. He stopped abruptly, his expression shifting from surprise to irritation. Who are you? Olivia Chen, sir. I started Monday. His eyes, a striking gray that reminded her of storm clouds, assessed her with clinical detachment. Where's Margaret? She retired last month. Mrs. Winters hired me as her replacement. Something flickered across his face, a momentary confusion quickly masked. Right. Carry on. He turned away, dismissing her from thought, but not before Olivia caught something in his expression that surprised her. Beneath the coldness, beneath the authoritative demeanor, she glimpsed exhaustion so profound it seemed to have seeped into his bones. Their next encounter came 2 days later, when she entered the study to find him working at his desk. I'll come back later, she said, already retreating. No need. His voice was clipped, attention never leaving his computer screen. I've learned to tune out distractions. The casual dismissal, reducing her to background noise, should have offended her. Instead, it gave Olivia the opportunity to observe him while dusting the bookshelves. The rigid posture that couldn't quite hide his discomfort. The slight wince when he shifted his weight. The way his hand occasionally moved to his right thigh, massaging briefly before returning to work. Old injury, she assessed automatically. Likely chronic pain, undertreated. When she finished cleaning, she paused at the door. Would you like me to bring you something for the pain, Mr. Westbrook? His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. Excuse me. Your leg, she said simply. The barometric pressure drops before storms. It often exacerbates joint and nerve pain. For a moment, genuine surprise broke through his mask. Then his expression hardened. I don't recall asking for medical opinions from my housekeeping staff. You didn't, Olivia acknowledged, unfazed by his tone. But unnecessary suffering seems inefficient, and I understand you value efficiency. She closed the door before he could respond, heart pounding despite her calm exterior. She'd overstepped, possibly risked her job, but something about his carefully constructed coldness bothered her. As a nurse, she'd learned that pain unaddressed didn't disappear. It transformed, often into something worse. The following morning, she found a note on the kitchen counter in precise handwriting. Ms. Chen, your duties do not include medical assessments. Confine yourself to the tasks outlined in your contract. Olivia should have been chastened. Instead, she found herself leaving a small jar beside the note before continuing her rounds. Inside was a topical analgesic cream she'd made herself, with arnica and wintergreen. No label, no explanation, just a silent acknowledgement of pain recognized. Their unspoken battle of wills continued in the weeks that followed. Ethan would set impossible standards. Olivia would meet them without comment. He would work through dinner. She would leave meals outside his study that somehow addressed his preferences without him ever stating them. He would return late, tie askew and eyes shadowed. She would have already turned down his bed and left lavender oil on his nightstand. Never mentioned, never acknowledged, but always used. What neither admitted was a growing awareness humming between them. Ethan found himself listening for her footsteps in the hallway. Olivia caught herself wondering about the rare books in his study, what they revealed about the man behind the mask. Both noticed details about the other that no one else seemed to see. A silent recognition was building between them, one that would shatter completely the night the storm came. The storm arrived without warning. Dark clouds swallowed the afternoon sun as wind lashed against the mansion's windows. Olivia moved efficiently through the upper floors, securing balcony doors and checking that all windows were properly latched. The weather report had mentioned possible tornado conditions, unusual for this region, but increasingly common as climate patterns shifted. Lightning split the sky as she approached Ethan's study. Thunder followed immediately, the sound so powerful it seemed to shake the very foundation of the house. Through the heavy oak door, she heard a crash, glass breaking, perhaps a lamp or decanter. Olivia hesitated only briefly before knocking. When no response came, concern overrode protocol. She turned the handle and stepped inside. The study was dim, illuminated only by the storm's electric flashes through the wall of windows overlooking the state grounds. Rain pelted against the glass like desperate fingers trying to get in. Near the fireplace, a crystal tumbler lay shattered, amber liquid seeping into the Persian rug. But it was a sound that made Olivia's nursing instincts kick into high alert. The unmistakable pattern of hyperventilation, the desperate struggle for air that never seemed sufficient. Ethan was on the floor beside his desk, back pressed against the wall, knees drawn up. His normally immaculate appearance had disintegrated. Tie loosened, hair disheveled, face ashen. His eyes were open but unseeing, fixed on some horror invisible to anyone else. Olivia recognized the symptoms immediately. Acute panic attack with possible flashback components. She'd seen it countless times in the trauma ward, particularly with accident victims. She approached slowly, making her movements deliberate and non-threatening. "Mr. Westbrook," she called softly. "Ethan, you're having a panic attack." He didn't respond, his breathing growing more erratic. His hand clutched at his chest, a common reaction when the sensation of suffocation becomes overwhelming. Olivia knelt beside him, careful to maintain some distance. "Ethan, I need you to focus on my voice. You're in your study at home. Today is Thursday, April 12th. It's raining outside, but you're safe in here." Another crash of thunder shook the room. Ethan flinched violently, a sound escaping him that was part gasp, part suppressed cry. "Car, can't breathe." The fragmented word confirmed her suspicion. He was reliving the accident, the trauma superimposed over present reality. "You're not in a car," she said firmly. "You're in your study. The sound is thunder, not a crash. I'm going to help you, but I need your permission to come closer. Can you nod if that's okay?" For a moment, she thought he hadn't heard her. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. Olivia moved beside him, close but not touching. "I'm going to count, and I want you to try to breathe with me. For count in, hold for 7, out for 8. Like this," she demonstrated, exaggerating the sound of her own breathing to give him something to follow. After several failed attempts, he began to match her rhythm, his body gradually relaxing from its rigid posture. "That's good," she encouraged. "Now, I want you to name 5 things you can see in this room." His eyes, still unfocused, darted around. Desk, he managed. Books. Window. Rain. You. The last word came with the first real eye contact, a moment of genuine recognition breaking through panic. Perfect. Now 4 things you can touch. Slowly, methodically, she guided him through the grounding exercise, watching his awareness return to his expression. When his breathing had stabilized, she reached for his hand, telegraphing her movement to avoid startling him. I'm going to check your pulse, okay? He nodded, allowing her to take his wrist. His skin was cold and clammy, pulse still too rapid but no longer dangerously so. The first time it happened to me, I thought I was dying, Olivia said conversationally, maintaining her gentle hold on his wrist. 3 months after the fire that killed my parents. I was in a lecture hall when someone's phone alarm went off, the same sound as our smoke detector. Next thing I knew, I was under the desk, convinced I was back in that burning house. Ethan's eyes, now fully present, studied her face. How did you stop them? I didn't at first. They controlled me. She released his wrist, but didn't move away. Then a professor who specialized in trauma recovery taught me these techniques. They don't prevent the attacks, but they give you tools to move through them. Lightning flashed again, followed by thunder, but this time Ethan didn't flinch. Breathe with me, she said, taking his hand and placing it against her heart. The gesture was instinctive, born from years of calming panic patience. Feel my heartbeat. You're safe. The past can't hurt you here. For several minutes, they sat in silence, the steady rhythm of her heart beneath his palm becoming an anchor to the present. The intimacy of the moment was profound, not romantic, but deeply human. 2 people who had survived their own private storms, recognizing the weather patterns in each other. When Ethan finally spoke, his voice was rough but steady. No one has ever seen this. Not even my therapist knows how bad it gets. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget, Olivia replied, especially during storms. Why aren't you afraid of me? The question seemed to surprise him as much as her. Most people are. I've worked in emergency rooms, Mr. Westbrook. I restrained patients twice your size during psychotic episodes and talked down people actively hallucinating. Your particular brand of intimidation loses its effect after that. A sound escaped him, not quite a laugh, but the closest thing to it she'd ever heard from him. Fair point. Olivia stood, offering her hand. After a moment's hesitation, he took it, allowing her to help him to his feet. If she noticed how he leaned on her slightly, compensating for his right leg, she gave no indication. I'll clean up the glass, she said, stepping back to a professional distance. Would you like me to bring you some tea? Chamomile helps with the post-adrenaline crash. Ethan straightened his tie, his composure returning visibly with each passing second. Anyone entering now would see only the controlled CO, not the vulnerable man from moments before. That won't be necessary, he said, voice regaining its usual clip precision. Thank you for your assistance. Olivia nodded, already moving to collect the broken glass. She expected him to leave, to retreat to his bedroom where he could fully reconstruct his armor in private. Instead, he paused at the door. Ms. Chen. Yes. The cream you left. From my leg. He didn't turn to face her. It helped. Before she could respond, he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Neither mentioned the incident the following day or the day after. On the surface, nothing had changed. Ethan maintained his distance. Olivia performed her duties with quiet efficiency. But something fundamental had shifted between them, an unspoken recognition that could never be undone. He had seen her compassion, not as a professional obligation, but as a core element of her character. She had seen his vulnerability, not as weakness, but as evidence of survival. And in that seeing, the first crack appeared in the ice surrounding Ethan Westbrook's heart. Spring melted into summer, bringing with it a subtle shift in the rhythm of the Westbrook estate. The changes were almost imperceptible at first, small adjustments in routine that could be dismissed as coincidence if one wasn't paying attention. Ethan began arriving home earlier, often while Olivia was still completing her evening tasks. Their paths crossed more frequently in hallways and rooms that had previously seemed too vast for accidental meetings. Conversations remained brief and professional, yet lingered seconds longer than necessary. One evening, Olivia was shelving books in the library when a sharp pain lands behind her eyes, forcing her to grip the ladder for support. The migraines had started after her grandmother's second stroke, stress manifesting physically. Her doctor had explained. Usually, she managed to work through them, but this one had ambushed her with unusual intensity. Ms. Chen. She hadn't heard Ethan enter, hadn't realized she'd made a sound until his voice reached her. Composing herself, she turned to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I'm fine," she said automatically. "Just a headache." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You're pale, and your pupils are constricted despite the dim lighting. Migraine." The accurate assessment surprised her. "Yes, it'll pass. Take the rest of the evening off," he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't suggestion. "That's not necessary." "It is." Something in his voice softened almost imperceptibly. "The books will still be here tomorrow." Too drained to argue, Olivia nodded and made her way to her quarters in the East Wing. The small suite, a bedroom, bathroom, and sitting area, was her private sanctuary within the mansion. She expected the pain to keep her awake for hours, as it usually did. Instead, she found a small package outside her door, lavender essential oil, a cooling eye mask, and magnesium supplements. No note, no explanation needed. The specific combination was exactly what her neurologist had recommended months ago, information Ethan couldn't possibly have known without research. The realization that he had taken time to investigate her condition, that he had noticed her pain and responded to it, kept her awake long after the migraine subsided. 2 weeks later, Westbrook Industries hosted a reception for international investors. The mansion transformed into a showcase of wealth and influence, with staff increased threefold for the evening. Olivia had been assigned to ensure the guest suites remained immaculate, a task that occasionally required navigating through the edges of the gathering. She was restocking towels when a voice slurred behind her. "Well, aren't you a pretty little thing?" Turning, she found herself facing a middle-aged man whose expensive suit couldn't disguise his intoxication. His name badge identified him as a representative from a German investment firm. "Excuse me, sir," she said politely, attempting to step around him. He blocked her path, swaying slightly. "So serious. You should smile more. I bet you're beautiful when you smile. I need to finish my work." Olivia kept her voice neutral, professional training kicking in. She'd handled worse in the ER. "Your work can wait." His hand reached for her arm. "I'm much more interesting than." "Is there a problem, Mr. Hoffman?" Ethan's voice cut to the exchange like ice through warm water. He stood in the doorway, his expression pleasant but his eyes cold. The investor withdrew his hand immediately. "No problem at all. Just getting acquainted with your lovely staff. Ms. Chen is not here for your acquaintance." Ethan's tone remained conversational, yet something in it made the other man step back. "She is a valued employee of this household, and as such, is extended the same respect as any member of my team. Is that clear?" The man's face flushed. "I meant no offense." "None taken, I'm sure." Ethan smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "Now, I believe the Taiwanese delegation was asking about your renewable energy portfolio. They're in the main hall." The dismissal was unmistakable. After the investor departed, Ethan turned to Olivia. "Are you all right?" "Yes. Thank you for intervening, but I could have handled it. I'm aware of your capabilities, Ms. Chan." Something flickered in his expression. Respect, perhaps. "That doesn't mean you should have to use them while under my roof." He left before she could respond, returning to his guest with the smooth efficiency of a practiced host. But the message had been delivered, not just to the handsy investor, but to everyone present. Olivia Chen was not to be disrespected. The incident created a subtle shift in their dynamic. Ethan began asking her opinion on small matters, which guest suite might best accommodate an elderly visitor, whether the new chef's menu seemed balanced. Olivia found herself lingering when delivering reports or collecting dishes, their conversations extending beyond the necessary. One rainy afternoon, while Ethan was at the office, Olivia discovered a hidden drawer in his study desk while cleaning. It contained dozens of architectural sketches, homes of various styles, each rendered with surprising skill and attention to detail. Unlike the mansion's cold modernism, these designs featured warm, inviting spaces centered around nature and family life. Sunrooms filled with plants, kitchens designed for gathering, nurseries with window seats. She closed a drawer without mentioning her discovery. But the following week, she accidentally left several books on sustainable architecture and biophilic design on the coffee table in his study. When they disappeared into his private collection without comment, she smiled to herself. Their unspoken communication continued evolving, a language of small gestures and noticed details. Ethan observed that Olivia always chose a classical music station when working in rooms with radios. Suddenly, the whole house sound system began playing Bach and Chopin during her shifts. Olivia realized Ethan often skipped lunch when working from home. Fresh sandwiches began appearing on his desk at precisely noon. Then came the call that shattered Olivia's carefully maintained composure. Her grandmother had suffered another stroke, more severe than the previous ones. The care facility didn't expect her to regain consciousness. Mrs. Winters found Olivia in the laundry room, phone still clutched in her hand, tears streaming silently down her face. "My grandmother," she managed to explain. "I need to go to her." The housekeeper's usual severity softened. "Of course. Take whatever time you need." Olivia spent 3 days at her grandmother's bedside, watching the woman who had raised her slip further away despite the hospital's efforts. On the 4th morning, a specialist arrived, Dr. Eleanor Reeves, one of the country's foremost neurologists, whose waiting list for consultations stretched into months. "I don't understand," Olivia said when the doctor introduced herself. "We didn't request a specialist." Dr. Reeves smiled gently. Mr. Westbrook arranged it. He was quite insistent that Mrs. Chen receive the best possible care. The treatment plan Dr. Reeves developed gave Olivia's grandmother a fighting chance. Within weeks, she was conscious, responding to therapy, showing signs of the stubborn resilience that had defined her life. Ethan never mentioned his intervention. When Olivia returned to work, he simply asked if her grandmother was improving, as if he had no connection to the miracle specialist who had appeared at exactly the right moment. But that night, she left a small jade figurine outside his bedroom door, a dragon, symbol of strength and good fortune in her grandmother's culture. No note, no explanation needed. What made their connection exceptional wasn't romance or physical attraction, though both existed beneath the surface. It was recognition, the ability to see in each other what others missed. Both had survived losses that shaped them fundamentally. Both had built armor against further pain. Ethan's forged from cold efficiency. Olivia's crafted from warm self-sufficiency. Both were afraid to need anyone, yet increasingly found themselves looking for each other. And in that looking, something dangerous and beautiful began to grow. Autumn arrived at the Westbrook estate in a blaze of color, transforming the manicured grounds into a canvas of crimson and gold. With the changing season came a subtle transformation in the mansion's owner. Changes so gradual, they might have gone unnoticed by anyone who wasn't watching closely. But Olivia was watching. She observed how Ethan's interactions with his staff evolved. The edge in his voice softening, his criticism becoming constructive rather than cutting. When the gardener's apprentice accidentally damaged a rare Japanese maple, Ethan's response surprised everyone. "Plants heal," he said, examining the broken branch. "Give it proper care, and by spring, you won't even see the scar." The young man's relief was palpable. Later, Olivia overheard him telling the head gardener, "I thought he was going to fire me on the spot. The Ice King actually has a heart." She smiled to herself, knowing what others were just beginning to discover. Ethan's transformation continued in small but meaningful ways. He began leaving the office before dinner, sometimes even before sunset. His weekend calls grew shorter, less frequent. The tension that had seemed permanently etched between his brows eased, making him appear younger, more approachable. One evening, Olivia was gathering herbs from the kitchen garden when she sensed his presence. Turning, she found Ethan watching her from the stone path, his usual suit replaced by casual slacks and a sweater. "Those smell wonderful," he said, nodding toward the rosemary and thyme in her basket. "They're for the roast chicken tomorrow," she replied. Would you like to walk to the garden? The dahlias are at their peak. The invitation surprised them both. It wasn't her place to suggest such things, yet something in the moment, the golden hour light, the crisp air, his relaxed posture, made it feel natural. After a brief hesitation, he nodded. I'd like that. That first walk established a new pattern. Several evenings a week, they would meet in the garden as dusk approached. Initially, their conversations remained safe, observations about the plants, discussions of the estate's history. Gradually, the topics deepened. Ethan spoke of his parents, not their deaths, but their lives. How his father taught him to sail. How his mother could identify any classical piece within 3 notes. Olivia shared stories of her grandmother's village in China, the tradition she maintained even after decades in America, the proverbs that had shaped Olivia's worldview. My favorite was always the diamond cannot be polished without friction, nor the person perfected without trials, she told him as they paused by the koi pond. When I was younger, I thought it meant suffering made you better. Now I think it's about how we respond to pain, whether we let it shape us or break us. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, watching the fish create ripples in the darkening water. Which do you think happened to me? The directness of the question caught her off guard. I think you were shaped, not broken, she answered honestly. The shape might not be what you expected, but it protected what mattered most. And what's that? Your capacity to care. She met his gaze steadily. You built walls, but you kept that safe inside them. He looked away first, but not before she caught the impact of her words and his expression. Their evening walks became a sanctuary for both of them, a time outside of defined roles where they could simply be Ethan and Olivia, 2 people finding unexpected connection. He never mentioned her past as a nurse. She never referenced his reputation as the Ice King. Instead, they discovered shared interests in architecture, classical music, and surprisingly, science fiction novels. Asimov was my secret rebellion in business school, he admitted one evening. Everyone else was reading investment guides. I was exploring psychohistory and robot ethics. I have his complete foundation series in my quarters, Olivia replied. You're welcome to borrow them. The next day, she left the first volume on his nightstand. He returned it 3 days later with a note. Couldn't put it down. Is the second available? Their literary exchange became another thread in the tapestry of their growing connection. Books passed between them with notes tucked inside, observations, questions, sometimes just a particularly meaningful passage underlined. Through these exchanges, they revealed parts of themselves that conversation might never have uncovered. Olivia's impact on Ethan unfolded in other subtle, powerful ways. She never directly challenged his cynical worldview, yet her consistent compassion toward others, from the overworked delivery driver she always offered water to the cleaning staff she helped during busy periods, provided a quiet counterpoint to his belief that everyone had an angle. She treated his scars, both physical and emotional, as simply parts of him, not defining features. When his limp worsened during cold snaps, she adjusted their walking route without comment, finding paths with benches strategically placed. When certain topics triggered his withdrawal, she navigated around them without pressing or pitying. One rainy evening, their walk canceled by weather, Olivia found Ethan in the library staring at a family photograph, himself as a child between his parents, all 3 smiling on the deck of a sailboat. Do you sail anymore? She asked, setting down the books she'd come to shelve. No. His voice was distant. I sold the boat after the accident. Olivia sat in the chair opposite him, sensing he needed to talk but wouldn't initiate. Because of your leg? Partly. He set the photo down. Mostly because I couldn't bear it. The water, the freedom. It reminded me of who I used to be. And who was that? His smile held no humor. Someone who believed in things. Trust. Partnership. The future. He shook his head. Naive, in retrospect. I don't think hope is naive, Olivia said quietly. Unguarded? Perhaps. But not naive. Unguarded is dangerous. So is never letting anyone in. The words slipped out before she could reconsider them, instead of the sharp response she expected. Ethan studied her with genuine curiosity. You've experienced loss, yet you remain open. How? The question touched something deep within her, fear she rarely acknowledged even to herself. "I'm not as open as you think," she admitted. "I keep people at a safe distance too. Different method, same result. What are you afraid of?" His voice had softened, the question sincere rather than challenging. "Not being enough." The truth emerged, raw and unfiltered. "Not being enough to save my parents from a fire. Not being enough to prevent my grandmother's strokes. Not being enough professionally to support us both. I keep trying to prove my worth through service, but there's always this voice saying whatever I do won't matter in the end." The vulnerability of her confession hung between them, creating a mirror for Ethan's own insecurities. For a moment, neither spoke, the rain against the windows filling the silence. "I think," he finally said, "we're both haunted by ghosts we created ourselves." That night marked another shift in their relationship, a deeper honesty that extended beyond their evening conversations. When Ethan had a particularly difficult board meeting, Olivia could sense his tension and would leave his favorite tea in his study. When she received worrying updates about her grandmother, he would find ways to adjust her schedule without explicitly acknowledging why. The most profound example came after Ethan experienced a particularly severe nightmare. His shout had awakened Olivia, whose quarters were close enough to hear. She'd approached his door, uncertain whether to knock, when the sound subsided. Instead of returning to bed, she sat outside his room and played soft classical music on her phone, Bach's Cello Suite No. 1, which she'd noticed always calmed him. She never mentioned it the next day, but when the nightmares returned the following week, she did the same. The third time it happened, his door opened just as she was about to leave. Ethan stood there, hair disheveled from sleep, vulnerability evident in his expression. "You don't have to sit on the floor," he said quietly. "There's a perfectly good chair in here." It became their unspoken arrangement. On bad nights, she would bring her phone and sit in the armchair by his window, playing music until he fell asleep again. They never discussed it in daylight hours, but the trust implicit in those moments deepened their connection in ways neither could articulate. The most startling evidence of Ethan's transformation came during a dinner he was hosting for his executive team. Olivia was serving coffee when the CFO made a self-deprecating joke about his golf game. Ethan responded with a quip so unexpectedly witty that the entire table erupted in laughter, including Ethan himself. The sound was rich and genuine, a glimpse of the man he might have been without tragedy's intervention. It startled everyone present, but none more than Ethan and Olivia, whose eyes met across the room in shared surprise. Later, she found him in the kitchen, uncharacteristically making his own tea. "I think I've forgotten how to laugh properly," he said, a hint of wonder in his voice. It felt strange, like using a muscle that's atrophied. Olivia smiled. Some things the body remembers, even when the mind tries to forget. His answering smile, small but genuine, was another crack in the ice surrounding his heart, not because she had tried to change him, but because she had created space for him to remember who he was beneath the armor. The Ice King was melting one drop at a time. The Westbrook Foundation's annual charity gala transformed the mansion into a glittering showcase of wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light over silk gowns and bespoke suits as the city's elite mingled through rooms normally closed to outsiders. This year's theme, Rebuilding Lives, supported trauma recovery programs, a cause that had appeared on Ethan's philanthropy calendar only recently. Olivia moved efficiently through the background chaos, coordinating with caterers and ensuring everything ran smoothly. Though technically off-duty for the event, she had volunteered to help, knowing how important the foundation was to Ethan. She wore a simple black dress, professional yet elegant, her hair swept into a neat updo that revealed the graceful line of her neck. From across the grand ballroom, Ethan caught glimpses of her throughout the evening. Despite being surrounded by the city's most beautiful and accomplished women, his eyes repeatedly sought her out, noticing how she anticipated needs before they arose, how she calmed a flustered server with a few quiet words, how she seemed to exist in a different reality than the glittering superficiality around them. He was speaking with the hospital board chairman when a familiar laugh cut through the ambient noise like a blade. Turning, he saw Victoria Sinclair entering on the arm of James Harrington, a venture capitalist whose reputation for ruthless acquisitions rivaled Ethan's own former approach. 5 years had passed since he'd seen her. She was still stunning. Her blonde hair now cut in a sleek bob, her red dress design command attention. When their eyes met across the room, her smile held the same calculated charm that had once captivated him. "Ethan," she greeted, approaching with practiced grace. "Your foundation is doing remarkable work. James and I were just discussing how unexpected it is to see you involved with emotional recovery programs." The subtle emphasis on emotional wasn't lost on him. "People change, Victoria. Some even grow." Her laugh tinkled like ice and crystal. "How refreshing to hear you admit the possibility." She glanced around the transformed space. "The mansion looks wonderful. You've made some changes since our time together." "Everything changes," he replied evenly. "Would you excuse me? I need to check on our guest speaker." He moved away before she could respond, his composure intact, but his mind racing with unwelcome memories. The encounter left him unsettled, old wounds threatening to reopen beneath carefully constructed scar tissue. Across the room, Olivia noticed the exchange and the subtle tightening of Ethan's shoulders afterward. She recognized Victoria from photographs she'd seen in old news articles about the accident. Research she'd done months ago, tried to understand the man behind the mask. Seeing her in person, Olivia was struck by the woman's flawless beauty and equally flawless calculation. The evening progressed smoothly despite Victoria's presence. Ethan delivered a powerful speech about resilience and second chances that moved several donors to increase their pledges. The guest speaker, a trauma surgeon turned PTSD specialist, presented compelling research on innovative recovery approaches. By all measures, the gala was a tremendous success. Olivia was refreshing the coffee service when she felt someone approach behind her. "So you're the one." Victoria's voice was honey-laced with poison. "I've heard whispers about Ethan's little project." Olivia turned, maintaining her professional composure. "I'm sorry, I don't understand." "Don't you?" Victoria's smile never reached her eyes. "The broken CEO and his charity case. First a grandmother's medical care. Now I hear you're practically living in the mansion. It's a fascinating rehabilitation strategy. I work here, Ms. Sinclair. Nothing more." "Please." Victoria sipped her wine, assessing Olivia over the rim of her glass. "Ethan collects damaged things. It's his way of controlling his environment. I'm sure whatever sad story you shared has been very effective, but don't mistake his savior complex for genuine interest." Before Olivia could respond, Victoria's hand slipped, sending red wine cascading down the front of Olivia's dress. "Oh, dear," Victoria said with mock concern. "How clumsy of me. Though perhaps it's a useful reminder about staff knowing their place at these events." The calculated cruelty was designed to humiliate, to reinforce the social chasm between them. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks as nearby conversations paused, attention turning toward the small drama unfolding by the coffee service. "Is there a problem here?" Ethan's voice cut through the moment. He stood beside them, his expression controlled, but his eyes cold as he took in the scene. Olivia's stained dress, Victoria's false contrition. "Just a little accident," Victoria replied smoothly. "I was just telling your maid how—" "Miss Chen is not just my maid," Ethan interrupted, his tone deceptively calm. "She's the operations manager for the Westbrook household and a key coordinator for tonight's event. More importantly, she's someone I hold in the highest regard." The public declaration silenced the whispers around them. Victoria's perfect composure slipped for just a moment, surprise flickering across her features before her mask returned. "Well," she recovered, "accidents happen regardless of one's position." "Indeed they do." Ethan turned to Olivia, his expression softening. "There's a dress in the East Wing guest suite, the blue one we selected for the Foundation's executive director, who couldn't attend. I believe it would fit you perfectly." The deliberate use of "we," implying Olivia's involvement in Foundation decisions, wasn't lost on anyone listening, nor was the gentle respect in his voice as he added, "Please take your time. The gala can manage without you for a few minutes." As Olivia left to change, she heard Ethan addressing Victoria with perfect civility that nonetheless carried an unmistakable edge. "I believe your date is looking for you, Victoria. Something about leaving early for another engagement. The message was clear. Her presence was no longer welcome. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of activity as the gala concluded. It was nearly midnight when the last guest departed, leaving the staff to begin the massive cleanup. Ethan insisted they leave everything until morning, sending everyone home with generous bonuses for their exceptional work. Everyone except Olivia, who found herself reluctant to leave him alone after the evening's emotional undercurrents. She found him in the library, jacket discarded, tie loosened, staring out at the garden where rain had begun to fall. "You should go home," he said without turning. "It's late." "So should you," she replied, "but I suspect neither of us would sleep well tonight." He turned then, studying her in the borrowed blue dress that transformed her from staff to equal. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "I should have told you earlier." The compliment hung between them, honest and unguarded in a way their previous interactions had never been. Something had shifted tonight. Victoria's appearance had forced into the open feelings that had been building beneath the surface for months. "Thank you for what you did," Olivia said. "You didn't have to defend me." "Yes, I did." His voice was quiet but certain. "Not because you couldn't handle it yourself, but because—" He hesitated, searching for words. "Because you deserve better than cruelty disguised as social hierarchy." Thunder rumbled outside, rain intensifying against the windows, nature providing a soundtrack to the tension building between them. Ethan moved to the bar cart, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey and offering one to Olivia. "To surviving uncomfortable reunions," he said with a wry smile. She accepted the glass, their fingers brushing in a contact that sent awareness shimmering through both of them. Was it difficult? Seeing her again? Less than I expected. He took a seat on a leather sofa, gesturing for her to join him. 5 years ago, I thought she destroyed me. Tonight, I realized she just revealed who I already was. Someone afraid to trust, someone who needed control to feel safe. The admission hung in the air between them, more intimate than any previous conversation. Rain pounded against the windows as Ethan continued, finally sharing the full truth about his past and his fears. "After the accident, I convinced myself that vulnerability was weakness," he said, staring into his glass. "That emotions were liabilities. I'd built this perfect, controlled life where nothing could touch me because nothing mattered enough. And now," Olivia asked softly. His eyes met hers, unguarded for perhaps the first time since they'd met. "Now I find myself caring again, and it terrifies me." The honesty of his confession created a space for her own truth. Olivia set down her glass and moved closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. "What terrifies me," she said, "is how much I've come to need these conversations. Our walks, the books we share, the way you see me, not as someone to be fixed or saved, but as someone worth knowing." Ethan's hand trembled slightly as he reached out, hesitating just before touching her face. Olivia caught his wrist gently, guiding his palm to her cheek in a mirror of how she had calmed him months before during his panic attack. "Some people break us," she whispered, leaning into his touch. "Others show us we can be whole again." The air between them charged with possibility as Ethan's thumb traced the curve of her cheekbone. His eyes asked a question his voice couldn't form. Olivia answered by leaning forward, closing the distance between them. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question rather than a demand. When they parted, both slightly breathless, Ethan searched her face. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "This changes everything." "I've been sure for months," she admitted. "I was just waiting for you to catch up." His smile, genuine, unguarded, transformed his face before he kissed her again, deeper this time, years of loneliness and longing pouring into the connection between them. Olivia's hand slid into his hair as his arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer until she was practically in his lap, the borrowed blue dress rustling between them. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured against her neck. "Not as my employee, not as my friend, just as yourself." "Yes," she whispered, the single word carrying the weight of months of unspoken desire. He led her upstairs to his bedroom, a space she cleaned countless times but never truly entered. "Now," In the soft glow of bedside lamps, it transformed from the Ice King's lair to simply Ethan's room. With evidence of man, he truly was in a book stacked on his nightstand and the architectural sketches pinned to his private bulletin board. What followed was not just passion but recognition. Two souls finding home in each other after being lost for so long. Each touch carried healing for old wounds. Each kiss a promise neither had dared to make before. Ethan's hands trembled as he unzipped her dress, his usual confidence replaced by reverent care. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, pressing his lips to her shoulder. "I've imagined this so many times." "Show me," Olivia challenged softly, helping him remove his shirt, her fingers tracing the scars on his chest from the accident. Not with pity, but with acceptance of every mark that had made him who he was. Their lovemaking was both tender and intense, each discovering what the other needed without words. When Ethan hesitated, suddenly self-conscious about his injured leg, Olivia kissed her way along the scarred tissue, showing him that nothing about his body could diminish her desire. When they finally came together, the connection transcended physical pleasure. In Ethan's arms, Olivia felt truly seen for perhaps the first time in her life. In Olivia's embrace, Ethan rediscovered parts of himself he thought had died in that car crash 5 years ago. Afterward, as rain continued to drum against the windows, they lay tangled together in sheets that smelled of jasmine and sandalwood. Ethan traced patterns on Olivia's bare shoulder, his expression thoughtful. "What are you thinking?" she asked, pressing a kiss to his chest. "That I've spent 5 years building walls," he replied, only to find that what I needed was on the other side of them. Outside, the storm began to ease, the rhythm of rain softening as they drifted to sleep in each other's arms. Neither knew that this night had created more than just a new beginning for them. That in 9 months' time, their connection would manifest in 2 new lives, twins created from the love neither believed they would ever find again. For now, it was enough to have found each other, the Ice King and the woman who had melted his heart. Winter descended on the Westbrook estate, transforming the gardens into crystalline sculptures and wrapping the mansion in a blanket of pristine white. Inside, warmth bloomed in unexpected places. Ethan's study now featured comfortable reading chairs where he and Olivia spent evenings discussing books. The formal dining room had been abandoned in favor of the cozier kitchen nook. And most significantly, Olivia had moved from the staff quarters to the master suite, her belongings intermingling with Ethan's in a physical representation of their deepening relationship. For 6 weeks, they existed in a private paradise of their own making. Ethan reduced his working hours, delegating responsibilities he'd previously insisted only he could handle. Olivia maintained her role managing the household, but with a new authority that the staff quickly recognized and respected. Their evenings and weekends belonged to each other, exploring the city's hidden gems, planning renovations to make the mansion feel more like a home, and discovering the countless ways their bodies and minds connected. The first hint of complication came on a snowy Tuesday morning, when Olivia found herself violently ill for the 3rd consecutive day. As a nurse, she recognized the symptoms immediately, but confirmation came in the form of a discreet doctor's appointment and a black and white ultrasound image that changed everything. "Twins," the obstetrician had said, pointing to 2 distinct heartbeats flickering on the screen. "Congratulations, Miss Chen." Olivia sat in her car afterward, staring at the ultrasound photo with equal parts wonder and terror. Twins, 2 lives growing inside her, created from the love she and Ethan had found against all odds. Her hand trembled as she touched the image, tears blurring her vision. She hadn't planned to tell him immediately. Wanted to find a perfect moment, perhaps during their weekend getaway to the lakeside cabin he'd recently purchased. But fate had other plans. That evening, Olivia returned to the mansion to find Ethan in his study, his expression grave as he reviewed documents spread across his desk. "What's wrong?" she asked, instantly alert to his tension. He looked up, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing you need to worry about, just some old business resurfacing." "Ethan," she moved behind him, placing her hands on his shoulders. "We agreed, no more walls between us." He sighed, covering her hand with his own. "Victoria's back, not personally, but through her lawyers. She's threatening to release information about some questionable acquisitions Westbrook made during my darker period. Can she do that? The acquisitions were aggressive but legal. However, the internal communications around them, he shook his head. I wasn't a good person then. Olivia, the things I said, the tactics I approved, they wouldn't play well in today's business climate. What does she want? Officially? Money. Unofficially? His jaw tightened. She wants to prove she still has power over me, that she can still hurt me. Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter weather. And does she? Ethan turned, pulling her onto his lap, his arms encircling her waist. Not the way she thinks. I don't care about my reputation. The board will weather any storm with me. We've been through worse. But I care about how it might affect you. Me? I'm not involved in your business. No, but you're involved with me. His expression softened as he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The press would have a field day. Ice King's affair with household staff. They'd twist what we have into something tawdry. You don't deserve that kind of scrutiny. The pregnancy announcement died on Olivia's lips. This wasn't the moment. Not with Victoria's shadow once again darkening Ethan's life. Instead, she kissed him gently. We'll handle it together, she promised. Whatever comes. But the universe wasn't finished complicating their happiness. The following afternoon, Olivia opened the mansion door to find her brother Daniel on the doorstep. His expression a mixture of concern and disapproval. Surprise inspection, he said, attempting humor that didn't reach his eyes. Thought I'd see this palace you've been working in. Daniel Chen had raised Olivia after their parents' death, sacrificing his own ambitions to ensure she could pursue nursing school. Their relationship had always been close, if occasionally overprotective on his part. Now, as she led him through the mansion to the kitchen, she felt his assessing gaze taking in every detail. Quite a step up from Metropolitan Hospital, he observed, accepting the coffee she offered. Grandmother mentioned you'd moved into the main house. Said you sounded different on the phone. Olivia busied herself with preparing a snack tray, buying time. Different how? Happier, more settled. Daniel's tone sharpened. She also mentioned your boss has been covering her medical expenses. Care to explain that? Ethan arranged for her specialist. Yes, it was a kindness. Kindness. Daniel set down his cup with deliberate care. Liv. I've spent 15 years in corporate law. Men like Ethan Westbrook don't do kindness without expecting returns on investment. You don't know him, Olivia countered, feeling defensive heat rise in her cheeks. I know his type. The rumors about how he built his empire. The Ice King doesn't melt without reason. Daniel leaned forward, his expression softening. Are you sleeping with him? The blunt question hung in the air between them. Olivia lifted her chin, meeting her brother's gaze directly. I'm in love with him, and he loves me. Daniel's laugh held no humor. Of course he says that. You're beautiful, caring, and conveniently employed in his home. It's the perfect arrangement, until it isn't. It's not like that. Isn't it? What happens when he tires of playing house with the help, when the novelty wears off? Daniel's voice gentled, concern replacing judgment. These men don't marry their maids, Liv. They enjoy them, compensate them, and eventually replace them. You don't understand. I understand power imbalances. I understand that when this ends, and will end, you'll be the one left picking up the pieces. He reached for her hand. I'm worried about you. This isn't the life you planned. The conversation continued in circles, Daniel raising points that struck uncomfortably close to fears Olivia had buried beneath her happiness. By the time he left, promising to return the following week, seeds of doubt had taken root in fertile soil. That night, as Ethan slept beside her, Olivia stared at the ceiling, one hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. The twins, Victoria's threats, Daniel's warnings. The three threads tangled in her mind, weaving a tapestry of fears she couldn't ignore. What if Daniel was right? What if Ethan's feelings were temporary? A reaction to her care during his panic attack, gratitude for her acceptance of his scars. What if, when faced with the reality of fatherhood and the public scrutiny Victoria threatened to bring, he regretted their relationship? Worse, What if he stayed out of obligation to children, his resentment growing over years until it poisoned what they'd built? Morning brought no clarity, only a decision forming like ice crystals in her heart. She would protect Ethan from Victoria's threats by removing herself from the equation. She would protect her children from potential rejection by ensuring they never experienced it. And she would protect her own heart by leaving before it could be broken again. 3 days later, while Ethan attended an unavoidable board retreat in Chicago, Olivia packed her essential belongings and left a mansion that had become her home. She left no note. What could she possibly say that wouldn't sound like manipulation or invite him to follow? Instead, she placed the ultrasound photo in an envelope addressed to him, leaving it propped against his pillow where he would find it upon his return. Let him make his own choice, she thought, tears blurring her vision as she closed the mansion gates behind her. If he truly wanted her, wanted them, he would have to choose it freely, not from obligation or guilt. She rented a small apartment across the city using her savings, the space barely large enough for a bed and crib, let alone the twin she now knew she carried. She found work at an urgent care clinic, the hours manageable for her condition, though the pay barely covered rent and essentials. Each night, she waited for her phone to ring, for Ethan to demand explanations. Each morning, she checked for messages that never came. What Olivia didn't know was that Ethan had returned early from Chicago, rushing home with an engagement ring and architectural plans for renovating the East Wing into a family space. He'd made his decision, Victoria and her threats be damned. He would choose love over fear. What she couldn't know was that the envelope had slipped between the bed and wall, invisible to Ethan as he searched the empty mansion for any sign of why the woman he loved had disappeared without a word. What neither realized was how completely their miscommunication would separate them. Olivia, believing Ethan's silence, confirmed her brother's warnings. Ethan, convinced Olivia, had simply tired of his damaged soul and found the courage to leave. For 3 months, they existed in parallel universes of pain, connected by the growing lives inside Olivia, but divided by fears neither had the courage to confront directly, until the night a spring storm brought everything crashing down around them. Spring arrived with relentless rain, washing away winter's last traces and flooding the city's lower districts. For Ethan Westbrook, the changing season marked 3 months of living in a world drained of color, 3 months of searching for the woman who had disappeared from his life as completely as if she'd never existed. In his office overlooking the rain-slicked streets, Ethan stared at the report his private investigator had just delivered. After weeks of dead ends, they'd finally located Olivia, working at a small urgent care clinic in the city's Eastern District, living in a cramped apartment building with questionable wiring and a history of code violations. She's been there approximately 2 months, the investigator explained. Works 4 days a week, keeps to herself. Neighbors say she seems unwell. Unwell how? Ethan's voice sharpened with concern. Exhausted, pale, the man hesitated. Sir, there's something else. She appears to be in an advanced state of pregnancy. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. Pregnant. Olivia was carrying a child, his child, and had chosen to face it alone rather than stay with him. The revelation both wounded and confused him. Why would she leave without telling him? What had he done to make her believe he wouldn't want their child? Thank you, he said, dismissing the investigator with mechanical politeness. Send the full address to my phone. Alone in his office, Ethan pulled open his desk drawer and removed the small velvet box he'd carried for 3 months. The engagement ring he'd planned to give Olivia the night he returned to find her gone. Beside it lay the architectural plans for renovating the East Wing into a family space, the paper now creased from constant handling. He'd spent weeks analyzing every interaction, searching for the moment he must have failed her. Had she discovered something about his past that repulsed her? Had Victoria somehow contacted her with threats or lies? Or had Daniel Chen's unexpected visit triggered doubts about their future? Whatever the reason, he needed answers. Needed to understand why the woman who had taught him to feel again had walked away without explanation. As thunder rumbled overhead, Ethan made his decision. He would go to her tonight, not to demand her return, but simply to ensure she was safe, to offer support for their child regardless of her feelings toward him. If she truly didn't want him in her life, he would respect her choice, but he wouldn't abandon his child the way Victoria had abandoned him after his injuries. The storm intensified as his driver navigated through increasingly flooded streets toward the address in his phone. Twice they had to detour around areas where water had made roads impassable. By the time they reached the apartment building, rain was falling in sheets, lightning illuminating the dilapidated structure in harsh flashes. "Wait here," Ethan instructed his driver, stepping into the downpour without bothering with an umbrella. The building security door hung partially open, its lock long since broken. Inside, flickering fluorescent lights revealed peeling paint and the distinct smell of mildew. Ethan checked apartment numbers as he climbed to the third floor, his injured leg protesting each step. Apartment 3C was at the end of the hallway. He stood before the door, heart pounding, and raised his hand to knock. Before his knuckles could make contact, a sound from inside froze him in place. A cry of pain so raw it sent ice through his veins. "Olivia?" he called, knocking sharply. When no response came beyond another muffled cry, he tried the handle. Locked. Without hesitation, Ethan stepped back and slammed his shoulder against the door. The flimsy lock gave way on the second impact, sending him stumbling into a tiny studio apartment barely large enough for a bed and small table. Olivia was on the floor beside the bed, one hand clutching the mattress, the other wrapped protectively around her swollen belly. Her face was ashen, beaded with sweat, her breathing coming in short, pained gasps. "Ethan?" Her voice was weak with disbelief. "How?" "Don't talk," he interrupted, kneeling beside her despite the protest from his bad leg. "What's happening? Is it the baby?" "Babies," she corrected, grimacing as another contraction seized her. "Twins. My water broke an hour ago. Too early, only 30 weeks. The fear in her voice cut through him like a blade. Ethan pulled out his phone, calling his driver while simultaneously checking Olivia's pulse, rapid but strong. "I need you upstairs now," he ordered. Apartment 3C. Ms. Chen is in premature labor. While waiting, he gathered what information he could, how far apart her contractions were for minutes, whether she'd experienced any bleeding. Yes, if she called an ambulance, she had, but flooding had delayed response times. When his driver arrived, they carefully helped Olivia to her feet, supporting her between them as they navigated the stairs. Each time a contraction hit, they would pause, Ethan murmuring encouragement while she gripped his hand with surprising strength. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked as they reached the car, the question escaping before he could stop it. Olivia's eyes, clouded with pain, met his. "The envelope on your pillow. The ultrasound." "There was no envelope," he said, confusion evident in his voice. "No ultrasound. I came home to an empty house with no explanation." Before she could respond, another contraction seized her, more intense than the previous ones. Ethan helped her into the back seat, then slid in beside her, pulling her against his chest. "We'll talk later," he promised, pressing a kiss to her damp forehead. "Right now, we need to get you to a hospital." The drive through flooded streets became a race against time. Ethan's driver navigated with skill born from years of service, finding routes where emergency vehicles had clear paths. Throughout the journey, Olivia's condition deteriorated, her contractions intensifying, her skin growing clammy, her responses becoming increasingly disoriented. "Stay with me," Ethan urged, his voice betraying the fear he was trying to control. "We're almost there. Just hold on." When they finally reached Metropolitan Hospital, Ethan carried Olivia through the emergency entrance, his bad leg forgotten in the surge of adrenaline. "Premature labor, twins, 30 weeks, he announced to the triage nurse, who immediately called for assistance. What followed was a blur of activity. Olivia whisked away on a gurney, medical terms flying between staff, forms thrust at Ethan demanding insurance information and medical history he only partially knew. BP dropping. Fetal distress in twin A. Prep or 3 for emergency C-section. The last glimpse he had of Olivia was her pale face disappearing behind swinging doors, her eyes finding his with a mixture of fear and something that might have been regret. Then she was gone, and Ethan was alone in the waiting room, his clothes still damp from the rain, his heart pounding with a terror unlike anything he'd ever experienced. This was worse than the accident, worse than Victoria's betrayal. This was Olivia and their children fighting for their lives while he stood helpless. Hours passed in excruciating slowness. Ethan paced until his leg threatened to give out, then sat staring at the doors to which Olivia had disappeared. When a doctor finally emerged, his scrub showing evidence of recent surgery, Ethan rose on unsteady legs. "Mr. Westbrook?" The doctor confirmed. "I'm Dr. Patel, head of obstetrics." "How is she?" Ethan asked, his voice raw. "The babies?" Dr. Patel's expression was carefully neutral. Ms. Chen experienced severe preeclampsia, which triggered premature labor. We performed an emergency C-section. The twins, a boy and girl, are extremely premature at 30 weeks. They're in the NICU now, on ventilators to help their underdeveloped lungs. And Olivia? Stable, but we're monitoring her closely. The preeclampsia caused some complications, elevated liver enzymes, low platelet count. The next 24 hours will be critical. Ethan absorbed this information with growing horror. Could they die? Any of them? Dr. Patel's expression softened slightly. Modern NICUs work miracles with premature infants, even those born earlier than your twins. As for Ms. Chen, she's young and was healthy before this pregnancy. Those factors work in her favor. "I need to see them," Ethan said, the words more plea than demand. "Ms. Chen is in recovery. You can see her briefly. Then I'll have someone take you to the NICU to meet your children." Children. The word struck Ethan with its enormity. He had children. 2 tiny lives who had entered the world fighting for survival before he even knew of their existence. In the recovery room, Olivia lay still and pale, and 4 in one arm, monitors tracking her vital signs. Ethan approached cautiously, as if afraid she might disappear again. He took her hand, the one without the 4, and pressed it gently between both of his. "I'm here," he whispered, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. "I found you, and I'm not leaving. Not ever again." A nurse eventually led him to the NICU, where he was instructed to scrub his hands thoroughly before donning a sterile gown. Through glass windows, he could see rows of incubators, each containing a tiny life surrounded by medical technology. "Your twins are here," the nurse said, leading him to 2 incubators positioned side by side. Ethan's breath caught at his first glimpse of his children. They were impossibly small, each barely larger than his hand, with translucent skin through which he could see the delicate tracery of veins. Tubes and wires connected them to machines that beeped and hummed, monitoring every aspect of their fragile existence. "That's your son." The nurse indicated the slightly larger baby. 4 pounds, 2 ounces. "And your daughter, 3 pounds, 15 ounces. "They're so small," Ethan whispered, overwhelmed by their vulnerability. "But fighters," the nurse assured him. "Both have strong heartbeats and good brain activity. The ventilators are helping them breathe until their lungs develop more fully." "Can I touch them?" "Yes, through these ports in the incubator. Just be very gentle." With trembling hands, Ethan reached through the opening in his son's incubator. His finger, when placed beside the tiny hand, seemed enormous by comparison. To his amazement, 5 miniature fingers curled around his in a grip surprisingly strong for something so small. "Hello," he whispered, tears blurring his vision. "I'm your father." The word, father, opened something in Ethan's chest, a flood of emotion so powerful it nearly brought him to his knees. These tiny beings were part of him, created from the love he and Olivia had found against all odds. They needed him in a way no one ever had before. In that moment, standing between the incubators containing his children, Ethan made a silent promise to whatever force might be listening. If they survived, if Olivia and these precious, fragile lives pulled through, he would spend every remaining day being worthy of their love. No more walls, no more fear, no more letting the past dictate his future. For the next week, Ethan never left the hospital. He worked remotely from Olivia's room once she was moved from recovery, sleeping in a chair beside her bed. When she was strong enough to be wheeled to the NICU, he accompanied her, watching as she touched their children for the first time, tears streaming down her face. "They need names," she said softly, her finger gently stroking their daughter's arm. "What were you thinking?" Ethan asked, realizing how much of her pregnancy he had missed, all the decisions and preparations she had made alone. "Noah for him," she replied, "and Emma for her. Noah and Emma Westbrook. Ethan tested the names, finding they felt right. Perfect. Olivia's eyes widened slightly at the surname, but she didn't object. As days passed, Ethan established a new routine. Mornings were spent with Olivia, helping her recover her strength. Afternoons found in the NICU, one hand to the incubator port while he read aloud. Not children's books, but quarterly reports and business proposals. His deep voice seeming to suit the twins who responded to his presence with improved vital signs. Evenings were for conversations with doctors and research into premature infant care. He hired the best specialists to consult on the twins' case, arranged for equipment to be donated to the NICU, and began planning modifications to the mansion for when they could eventually come home. Through it all, he and Olivia existed in a strange limbo, bound by their children, but separated by the gulf of misunderstanding that had driven them apart. They spoke of the twins' progress, of medical decisions and practical arrangements, but avoided the deeper questions that hung between them, until the night Olivia found Ethan in the NICU at 3 a.m., his hand inside Noah's incubator, tears streaming silently down his face. "Ethan," she called softly, approaching in her wheelchair. Her strength was returning, but she still tired easily. He didn't turn, didn't try to hide his emotion. He grabbed my finger again. Every time he does that, I think about how close we came to losing them, to losing you. Olivia wheeled herself to Emma's incubator, reaching in to touch their daughter's tiny foot. "The doctors say they're doing remarkably well. Their lung function is improving daily." "That's not what I meant." Ethan finally looked at her, his expression raw with honesty. "I meant losing you, all of you, because I didn't make it clear enough how much you mattered to me." The words hung between them, opening the door to the conversation they should have had months earlier. "I left the ultrasound," Olivia said quietly. "When I found out about the twins, I was going to tell you immediately." Then Victoria's threats surfaced, and Daniel came with his warnings about power imbalances and how men like you don't stay with women like me. And you believed him. I believed in protecting the twins from rejection, from growing up feeling unwanted. Her voice caught. "My father walked out when he learned my mother was pregnant with me. Daniel raised me after our parents died. He's seen what happens when worlds like yours and mine collide." Ethan moved to kneel beside her wheelchair, taking her hands in his. "Olivia, I came home from that business trip with an engagement ring and plans to renovate the East Wing into a family space. I've been searching for you since the moment I realized you were gone. The envelope must have fallen," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I thought when you didn't call it meant that I didn't want you, our children." He shook his head, pain evident in his expression. "These past 3 months have been empty without you. I kept working, kept functioning, but nothing mattered. The house felt like a mausoleum again. I was afraid," Olivia admitted. "Afraid you'd resent being tied to me through the twins. Afraid I'd never truly fit in your world. You are my world." Ethan's voice broke on the words. "You and these 2 tiny fighters. The rest, the company, the mansion, the social expectations. None of it matters compared to what we created together." In the quiet of the NICU, surrounded by the soft beeping of monitors, keeping watch over their children, Olivia and Ethan finally bridged the gulf between them. She shared her fears about their different backgrounds, about the scrutiny they would face, about whether love could truly overcome such obstacles. He confessed how empty his life had been without her, how the walls he'd built had become a prison until she showed him another way to live, together. They acknowledged that love didn't erase their differences, but gave them reason to bridge them, for themselves and for the tiny lives who had brought them back together. "I don't care what anyone thinks," Ethan said, pressing a gentle kiss to her palm. "Victoria, your brother, the board, the press, none of them get to define what we are to each other. Only we can do that. And what are we?" Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan smiled, the expression transforming his face into the man she had fallen in love with, not the Ice King, but simply Ethan with all his strength and vulnerability. "We're a family," he said simply, "if you'll have me." As dawn broke over the hospital, casting golden light through the NICU windows, Olivia gave him her answer, not just with words, but with a kiss that promised healing, forgiveness, and a future neither had dared to imagine before finding each other. 6 weeks after their premature birth, Noah and Emma Westbrook were finally strong enough to leave the hospital. Their journey from fragile preemies to healthy infants had been marked by countless milestones. First breaths without ventilators, first feedings without tubes, first time being held without a tangle of wires. Through it all, Ethan and Olivia had remained constant presences, learning to be parents under the watchful eyes of NICU nurses who had become like family. The morning of their homecoming dawned clear and bright. Early summer sunshine warming the city after months of spring rain. Ethan had gone ahead to make final preparations while Olivia completed discharge paperwork and received last-minute instructions from Dr. Patel. "They've beaten the odds," the doctor said, smiling as he watched the twins sleeping in their matching carriers. "But they'll need extra monitoring for the first year. Their immune systems are still developing, so limit visitors and be vigilant about infections." "We will," Olivia promised, her medical training giving her confidence despite first-time parent nerves. "Thank you for everything." When Ethan's driver arrived to collect him, Olivia felt a strange mixture of elation and anxiety. The twins had never been outside the controlled environment of the hospital. The world suddenly seemed filled with dangers she hadn't considered before becoming a mother. "They'll be fine," the NICU charge nurse assured her, helping secure the carriers in the car's custom-installed bases. "You've got this, Mama." The drive to the Westbrook estate passed in comfortable silence, Olivia alternating her attention between the sleeping twins and the familiar landmarks outside her window. 3 months had passed since she'd left the mansion, believing she was protecting everyone by disappearing. Now she was returning not as staff, not even as Ethan's partner, but as the mother of his children. "Nervous?" Ethan asked, reaching across to take her hand. "A little," she admitted. "Everything's different now." His smile was gentle. "Everything important is the same." As the car approached the mansion gates, Olivia noticed the first change. The imposing security booth had been softened with window boxes overflowing with colorful flowers. The formal hedges lining the driveway had been interspersed with flowering cherry trees, their pink blossoms creating a welcoming canopy. "You've been busy," she observed, squeezing his hand. "You haven't seen anything yet," he replied, a hint of nervous anticipation in his voice. When they reached the main entrance, Ethan insisted on carrying both twins himself, leaving Olivia free to take in the transformation that awaited inside. The moment she stepped through the door, she gasped in astonishment. The mansion she had left, all cold marble and minimalist design, had undergone a metamorphosis. Warm colors had replaced sterile white. The formal entryway now featured comfortable benches and family photographs. Soft textiles and natural materials had softened the previously harsh aesthetic. "Ethan," she whispered, turning in a slow circle. "What did you do?" "I made a home," he answered simply. "Our home." He led her to the main floor, where each room revealed thoughtful changes. The formal dining room with its imposing table had been converted into a cozy family space centered around a round oak table, perfect for intimate dinners and eventually family meals. The rarely used music room now housed a piano alongside comfortable seating and a state-of-the-art sound system. Mrs. Winters helped, Ethan admitted as they climbed the stairs. She has surprisingly strong opinions about what makes a house feel like a home. "I can imagine," Olivia laughed, remembering the housekeeper's stern exterior that had gradually warmed during her time at the mansion. But it was the east wing that held the greatest surprise. The entire space had been renovated into a family suite, a master bedroom connected to a smaller room where the twins could sleep nearby during their early months, and beyond that, a nursery that took Olivia's breath away. The walls had been hand-painted with scenes from the mansion's gardens. The rose arbor where they'd shared their first kiss, the koi pond where they discussed philosophy, the ancient oak where they'd shelter from unexpected rain. A mural of the 4 seasons wrapped around the room, creating a space that felt both magical and deeply personal. 2 identical cribs stood in the center, their cherrywood gleaming in the afternoon light. Above them hung a mobile of delicate glass birds that caught the sunlight, sending rainbow reflections dancing across the walls. "It's beautiful," Olivia whispered, tears filling her eyes as Ethan gently placed the sleeping twins in their cribs. "When did you do all this?" I started the day after I found you, he admitted. I needed something to do during the hours I couldn't be at the hospital. Something that would help me believe you'd all come home eventually. His vulnerability in that moment. The admission that he prepared this space while their children still fought for their lives, while reconciliation between them remained uncertain, touched Olivia deeply. There's one more thing I want to show you, Ethan said, taking her hand. When you're ready. After ensuring the twins were settled with the baby, nurse Ethan had hired to help during their first weeks home. They made their way to the garden. The summer evening was perfect, warm without being hot, the air scented with roses and freshly cut grass. Ethan led her to the stone bench where they had often sat during their evening walks, now surrounded by newly planted hydrangeas. This is where I first began to hope again, he said, his voice soft with memory. Right here, listening to you talk about your grandmother's proverbs and realizing I wanted to know every story you had to tell. Olivia smiled, remembering those early conversations, how carefully they had circled each other, revealing themselves in small, measured doses. I used to make excuses to dust the bookshelves when you were working just to be in the same room with you. I know, Ethan laughed. No one needs to dust the same shelves 3 times a week. They sat together on the bench, hands intertwined, watching as fireflies began to appear in the gathering dusk. After a comfortable silence, Ethan reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. Olivia's breath caught, but instead of opening it, he set it aside and pulled out a folded document. Before I give you what's in that box, he said, I want to give you this. Unfolding the paper, he revealed a deed and architectural drawings. The property, 10 acres overlooking the lake where they'd spent a weekend before their separation, had been transferred to both their names. The drawing showed a house unlike the mansion, warm, organic, designed around natural light and family spaces. I don't want to simply fit you and the twins into my existing life, Ethan explained. I want us to build something new together. A home that reflects who we are as a family, not just who I was before you. Olivia traced the drawings with her finger, recognizing elements from Ethan's hidden sketches combined with details she'd mentioned loving in their conversations about architecture. You remembered everything. Every word. He took her hands in his. Olivia, I'm not asking you to be the mother of my children. You already are that, and you're extraordinary at it. I'm asking you to be my partner in every sense. To build a life with me that honors both our pasts while creating something neither of us could imagine alone. Now he reached for the box, opening it to reveal not the diamond solitaire she had half expected, but a ring of twisted gold bands studded with small sapphires the color of the twins' eyes. I can't promise I'll never be afraid again, he told her, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. But I can promise I'll never let fear make my choices. You and our children are the best choice I'll ever make. Olivia looked from the ring to the man holding it, the so-called Ice King who had melted under her touch, revealing the warm, compassionate soul that had been there all along. Yes, she whispered, tears spilling onto her cheeks. To all of it, the ring, the house, the life. Yes. As Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, a cry echoed through the baby monitor, clipped to Olivia's belt. They both laughed, the moment perfectly capturing their new reality. Romance now permanently intertwined with parenthood. Welcome to the next chapter, Ethan said, helping her to her feet. I wouldn't have it any other way, she replied, kissing him before they walked hand in hand back to their children. 1 year later, the lakeside property had transformed from architectural drawings to reality. The house, a harmonious blend of modern and traditional elements, stood nearly complete, its large windows reflecting the sunset over the water. On the wide porch overlooking the lake, Ethan and Olivia sat side by side in Adirondack chairs, watching the twins play on a blanket at their feet. Noah, determined and serious like his father, was attempting to stack wooden blocks with intense concentration. Emma, more adventurous, kept crawling to the porch steps, requiring frequent redirection. At 10 months old, both showed remarkable development despite their premature birth, a testament to excellent medical care and the loving environment surrounding them. The year had brought changes beyond their growing family. Ethan had restructured Westbrook Industries, delegating day-to-day operations to allow himself 3-day weekends and reasonable working hours. The Ice King moniker had faded as his leadership style evolved to emphasize collaboration over intimidation. Victoria's threatened expose had eventually materialized as a weekly source article in a business tabloid, its impact neutralized by Ethan's preemptive transparency with his board and major shareholders. Rather than hiding from past mistakes, he had acknowledged them and demonstrated how his approach had changed, a strategy that ultimately strengthened his position rather than undermining it. Olivia, too, had found a new professional path. Using seed funding from the Westbrook Foundation, she had opened a small clinic serving the underinsured community where she'd lived during their separation. 3 days a week, she provided nursing care and health education, while the twins stayed with their doting grandmother, whose recovery had exceeded all medical expectations. Even Daniel had come around, his initial skepticism gradually giving way to grudging respect as he witnessed Ethan's unwavering commitment to Olivia and the children. The brothers-in-law would never be close, but they had reached an understanding based on their shared priority, the happiness of the Chen Westbrook family. As the sun dipped lower toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Ethan reached for Olivia's hand. The simple gesture echoed their first meaningful touch during his panic attack, a moment that had changed everything for both of them. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" he asked, watching Noah successfully balance a fifth block on his tower. "If you hadn't come into my study during that storm, if I hadn't found you that night in your apartment?" Olivia smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I think some people are meant to find each other, no matter what paths they take. The romantic's view," he teased gently, "says the man who designed a house with a special reading nook just because I mentioned loving window seats as a child." Ethan laughed, the sound no longer foreign or startling, but a regular part of their family soundtrack. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her wedding band. They had married in a simple ceremony on this very porch 3 months earlier, with only family and closest friends in attendance. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "for years after the accident, I convinced myself that losing Victoria was the worst thing that could have happened to me. Now I understand it was the best." "Because it led you to me?" Olivia suggested. "Because it broke me open," Ethan corrected gently. "And only by breaking could I learn how to heal, how to be whole in a different way." He gazed at their children, then back at the woman who had changed everything. "You didn't just heal my soul, Olivia. You gave me back my future." As twilight deepened around them, the 4 figures on the porch were silhouetted against the fading light. 2 adults and 2 children, forming the family portrait neither Ethan nor Olivia had dared to dream of before finding each other. Their story, which had begun with ice and isolation, had transformed into one of warmth and connection, a testament to love's power to heal even the deepest wounds, and a reminder that sometimes our greatest pain leads us directly to our greatest joy. In the nursery that night, as they tucked the twins into their cribs, Ethan and Olivia exchanged a look of profound understanding. They had both been broken in different ways. Both built walls to protect themselves from further pain. But in finding each other, they had discovered something essential. That true strength comes not from perfect protection, but from the courage to remain open despite the scars. And in that openness, they had found not just love, but home. As moonlight filtered through the nursery curtains, Ethan and Olivia stood between their sleeping children's cribs, their hands naturally finding each other in the gentle darkness. The twins' peaceful breathing created a rhythm that seemed to echo the certainty they had found in each other. "From Ice King to family man," Olivia whispered, smiling up at Ethan. "Who would have believed it?" "You did," he replied, drawing her close. "When no one else could see past the walls, you saw the man I could become." In the quiet of their new home, surrounded by the family they created against all odds, they shared a kiss that held both promise and fulfillment. The perfect ending to a journey that had begun with pain but transformed into something beautiful. The cold-hearted CEO who once ruled his empire with icy precision had found his true strength in vulnerability. The resilient Maid who had entered his world to heal her grandmother had ended up healing so much more. Together, they had created not just twins, but a legacy of love that would shape generations to come. Some said it was impossible, that people from such different worlds could never truly understand each other. But Ethan and Olivia had proven that the heart recognizes no boundaries when it finds its perfect match. Their love story wasn't about erasing differences, but embracing them, building something stronger precisely because of the diverse foundations they brought to their shared life. As they closed the nursery door behind them, hand in hand, they stepped not just into their future, but into the truth they had discovered together, that sometimes the deepest wounds lead us to our greatest love. My dear listeners, as we come to the end of Ethan and Olivia's journey, I hope their story has touched your heart as deeply as it has touched mine. There's something so powerful about watching someone's walls come down, isn't there? About witnessing that moment when a person chooses love over fear, vulnerability over protection. If you enjoyed this story of healing and second chances, I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to like this video and share with someone who might need to hear that their own wounds don't define their future. Your support helps our channel continue bringing these emotional journeys to life. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone saw past your defenses to the real you? Or perhaps you've been the one to recognize the pain behind someone else's walls. Your stories and experiences mean the world to this community we're building together. Don't forget to subscribe to the Chapters of Love for more heartfelt romance stories that remind us of love's power to transform even the most guarded hearts. Click that notification bell so you never miss our weekly uploads. Until our next journey together, remember that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin in the most unexpected places, and that everyone, even Ice King, deserve their chance of happily ever after. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I'll see you in our next chapter, and until then, take care of your beautiful heart. With love from me,